let's see what the Matrix tried to warn us about. This movie aged like fine wine, classic. It's a really good movie, honestly. It's so many referrals, it's crazy.
Matrix is one of the greatest films ever made, hitting $460 million in just box office sales alone, and The Matrix was an
At that time is a lot.
After 2 decades, its relevancy continues to stand strong.
Yeah.
With terms coined from the movies such as The Matrix and The Red Pill becoming widely adopted in modern culture. And yet even more
it's so fucked up, like how people are using the blue and red pill. Now there's a black pill. It's like, comes up with this shit.
Is that The Matrix is perhaps one of the most beautifully prophetic and meaningful movies ever created in history. So what is it about this film that made it so culturally important? How could this movie continue to be so relevant after 20 years? What was the movie tapping into? Well, this brings us on to the bedroom of a depressed, pasty software engineer, a nighttime hacker called Neo, who is slumped over in his trash-filled room, with the bleak film colouring resembling...
Bro, I call this trash-filled room, man. It's just unorganized, it's not even filled with trash. Now, Asmongold's room. Now that's trash.
A nighttime hacker called Neo, who is slumped over in his trash-filled room, with the bleak film colouring resembling his nihilistic, empty, dull existence that Neo lives in. At the start of The Matrix...
Was it popular to be I would consider myself pretty nihilistic, but is it popular to be nihilistic at those times? I don't know. I mean, I pretty much grew up. I was growing up when this movie came out, right? So it's like I was still a kid. But is it? I don't know if I was nihilistic back then, though. I'm pretty nihilistic now.
Neo is a nihilistic man. His corporate life and monotonous desk job makes Neo feel that his actions don't have any effect.
The funniest thing is, so he's nihilistic because of his job and stuff. I'm nihilistic because I see people doing these jobs. It's kind of funny, kind of like learn by example. So weird.
Small details in the film make this even clearer, with Neo's flat being numbered 101, a direct reference to George Orwell's book 1984. In Orwell's book, Room 101 was a torture room where people would be shown their greatest fears in order to mold them in the state's ideal image. And Neo's life is lived inside Room 101, where he is tortured by the routine.
I need to watch 1984.
Any meaning in his life, so he seeks to find these answers through his double life as a hacker, but comes up empty every time. Whatever he does while locked inside the Matrix has no meaning. But one day this starts to change when he wakes up to find a strange message on his monitor, with the message telling him that the quote Matrix has him and that he must follow the White Rabbit. It seems as though this could just be another hacker getting back at Neo. This could all just be a prank. But then the last thing the computer writes is knock knock Neo, just before somebody does exactly that on his door. And when Neo opens the door, he finds it's a group of people led by a man who wants to buy illicit information held on a storage device. Neo lets out a sigh of relief. This is business as usual, but after the purchase is complete, the group invites him out to the club, and right as he's about to refuse, Neo sees a white rabbit tattoo on the shoulder of one of the women. Realizing that this tattoo is part of the instructions sent by him on the computer, he accepts the invitation, knowing deep down that something is up. The decision to follow the white rabbit is
Alice. Yeah.
Neo's rejection of the Matrix.
Everyone knows what the white rabbit means. There's no point going into it, I guess.
But he doesn't quite know this yet, and so when arriving at the club, Neo is approached by a woman named Trinity, who cryptically warns him of impending danger. Neo recognizes her name as a fellow computer hacker. However, she says that was all a long time ago. Trinity then talks to Neo about his general dissatisfaction with life, as she knows that Neo is aimless and tormented by lack of meaning in his life. She knows that nihilism has sucked his soul, so she promises him that there will be an answer. Cut to the next scene, and we see Neo waking up late for work and proceeding to get chewed out by his boss. But in the back of Neo's mind are questions. Was following the White Rabbit just a dream? Who was Trinity? All while Neo continues his droney, hollowed out existence, living like human cattle in an artificial box with artificial lighting, trapped inside a spiritual cage with...
I love like the coloring, the video graphic of this movie is so good. It portrays like the dullness of the world, like the blue hue in all of these scenes, so strong.
With all the other droogs.
Look at it, like the whole room is blue. This is like greenish blue. It's like representing the Matrix, I guess.
More curious about the White Rabbit. It's a glimpse of something different. And just as Neo continues to stay stuck behind his cubicle, he's then struck by a call from a man named Morpheus.
They're coming for you, Neo, and I don't know what they're going to do.
Who alerts him that the danger Trinity was telling Neo about.
Bro, Andrew Tate was active way back then. Watched about a quarter of the first Matrix and nothing else. Bro, it is a really good movie to watch. Like, don't approach. You can approach it as whatever, like a movie, and just try to entertain. But as a thought process, The Matrix is fucked up. Right? It's like you can have a philosophical debate in your own mind about like what the Matrix represents to you, because you can pretty much use it in so many cases. You can use it in your relationships, you can use it in your workplace, you can use it about like your view on life, politics. You can, like, the Matrix, just you can represent pretty much almost any major point of your life with it, you know, major belief.
About is real, and that Neo is being forced.
I would say it's the best movie for critical thinking. This and Fight Club to an extent. If you just want to critically think about like anything, Matrix is a good representation.
By agents. In a tense scene, Neo briefly evades some agents who have been looking for him, but Neo's mind is the only thing holding him back. And Neo is actually successful in escaping the agents. He's finally taking that call to adventure. He's choosing to take his life into his own hands. This is the start of Neo breaking free from his cage. But then he comes up against his biggest challenge, as Morpheus tells Neo that the only way he can escape the agents is to walk across the ledge. But his programmed mind just can't overcome this obstacle. He doesn't believe in himself or his abilities.
I mean, I can't blame him on this one, you know? It's like, of course he's not gonna... Like, oh, you want me to just walk around the ledge? Yeah, brother. You know what? It's not happening.
Comfortable. He's never been near real danger, so his strength, his mind, and ability is hampered, causing him to refuse that call to adventure. And by refusing the call, this represents Neo refusing to tackle his fear. He knows he'll be successful if he overcomes his fear, and yet his weak, anxious mind is his biggest failure. His nihilism...
I don't think he would have been successful, right? So I'm working on like decks right now. Sometimes we build a deck and like I love what I watched. I just felt tired, then stopped and forgot to continue after. What dried me the most to watch it, I'd say, is the memes. Fair enough. Fair enough. Anyways, yeah, so about this scene, like, I don't think he would physically be able to. I'm working on decks. I would say, I don't know how bad my fear of heights is, but it's there. I have a fear of heights. Sometimes we build on, like, a higher deck, right? So it's like, when we have a low deck that's, like, very close to the floor, I'm walking on the deck, it's like half built, like I don't care, because like worst case I misplace my foot and I just like step on the ground. When I'm like, you know, a story, 2 stories up, bro, like walking on the deck is extremely fucking hard. Just because of that, like if you misstep, like, you know, you're gonna fall on, like your balls are gonna hit the deck stuff, right? So it's like the joist. So, you know, it's like, and it's like you start walking very differently compared to how you're walking when you're like next to the floor. I mean, so yeah, if he has like his brain like has a fear of heights, like yeah, he will not be able to do it physically. Just it is what it is.
Is what keeps him trapped in the Matrix. And so Neo fails to succeed, resulting in him being escorted to an interrogation room. At first, Neo believes that he's being prosecuted by regular government workers, but when Neo demands to be given his rights, they seal his mouth shut, as if it was done by magic. They then implant a mechanical tracking bug into his stomach, meaning that Neo will now always be tracked in the Matrix. He's an outlier, and outliers are the biggest threat to their society. And then just like that, Neo is back in his bed, again seeming like this was all just a dream. And yet somehow, Neo is immediately called again by Morpheus, who gets Trinity and some other crew members to pick him up. Before Neo meets Morpheus, Trinity removes the bug that is tracking him, proving to Neo that this wasn't a dream. From here, Neo goes on to meet his mentor, Morpheus, who's living inside an abandoned building. Morpheus confirms all of Neo's suspicions, telling him that his whole life is a lie, and that he was born a slave to the Matrix. This was why he was so demasculated, becoming just another corporate drone.
I can't, bro. I hear like certain sentences and I'm like, bro, Andrew Tate. Every time it's like, you're a slave to the Matrix. Like, fucking Andrew Tate, man. Every little thing's like, Andrew Tate.
It was all by design. However, Morpheus then offers Neo a choice. The decision on whether to remain blissfully ignorant or learn the true nature of the Matrix. Similar to our own reality, nobody can really be told what the Matrix is. One has to experience it and find out for themselves. So Morpheus then opens up his palms, revealing the notorious red and blue pills in his separate hands.
The thing is with the Matrix, I would say you would much rather be blissfully ignorant. I would probably choose to be blissfully ignorant. Because here's the thing. You're not you're not gaining much by knowing the truth, realistically, right? Like, let's think about realistically for a second, right? Let's say we're all slaves to the Matrix. Let's say we are in the Matrix, right? It's like, here we go, right? The philosophical bullshit. Let's say we are in the Matrix, right? It's like, do you care that your main body is a slave to the Matrix while your mind is experiencing life normally? Does it really matter? I don't think it does. Overall, I really don't think it does. Your life is your life either way. It's like either your brain, like everything you go through right now is what your brain experiences, your memories, your feelings, your emotions, your whatever, like how you react to situations. That's all your mind, regardless. So in that case, it doesn't matter if you're in the real world or like if you're in illusion, right? It's like imagine like those animes or whatever that you live in the virtual reality, right? And people would be like, man, I just want to live in this virtual reality. I don't want to be in the real world. What's the difference? What your mind perceives as real is real. It doesn't matter. Overall, like it really doesn't matter. The only time this matters, like knowing the truth and stuff like that, is if you wanna change the future for other people. Changing it for yourself, this will not really matter. You're just making your life harder. Right? So it's like the whole purpose of this is changing it for the rest of humanity. You won't really reap the rewards. You're leaving the rewards for like others to reap. That's how I view it.
In his left hand lies the blue pill, Neo's ticket to blissful ignorance. If he takes this pill, Neo will simply wake back up in his bed, believing in the nihilistic system that has brainwashed him, going back to his lonely, miserable, atomized existence, all while remaining ignorant to the true nature of the world. And on the other hand, sits the red pill. Taking this pill will grant Neo access to the Matrix, allowing him to see the world for what it truly is, as nasty as it may be. This decision is the crucial point of Neo's story, and marks the first phase of Neo's hero's journey. The hero's journey is one of the oldest tales of mankind. It's a narrative structure that ranges from all kinds of stories. From Star Wars to the Bible, the term was coined by author Joseph Campbell. He describes this as being a deeply ingrained part of the human psyche that allows humans to push through walls and do the impossible in pursuit of meaning. In the real world, the hero's journey is our path towards self-improvement and overcoming our neuroticism, anxiety, fears, and laziness.
How's that movie?
Right now, we're seeing this whole new wave of self-improvement, serving as a counterbalance to the nihilism that's embedded so deeply in
Office Space.
But this isn't a modern thing. In fact, many forms of Buddhism gave a similar path to enlightenment, along with so many other religions. The hero's journey is a process that's been taken by all of mankind. It's every step out of your comfort zone that brings you further towards truth. It's every action that you take towards self-improvement, which brings you closer to unlocking meaning in your life. And it's one of the key things that the Matrix...
That is probably the biggest thing, yeah. The whole like meaning in your life. Again, if you're a nihilist... right, it's like if you're a nihilist, I would say for the most part life doesn't really have meaning. So here's the way I see it. You know, like some people just want to have like statues of themselves or whatever, like leave a legacy, leave a history. The way I see it, man, once you're dead, you're dead. So view it this way. If the world is built for you, right, this is how I view the world. The world is built for me. And it's like, it can sound very egotistical, but it's like your world is built for you. All your experiences, all your all your knowledge, all your the way you're living your life, so that everything was built for you. The reason there are people who are different than you is to show you other paths that you might be able to take, or to kind of like direct you to where you are located in your life, right? Kind of like comparison points. But their life is not something that you should like focus on. You should focus on your life. Right, but it's like once your life is over, the world is over. There's no world after you die, because the world that you live was built for you. So it's like everything is a construct for your mind to experience things, right? I know, like that's kind of like how I wouldn't say I viewed everything in that lens, but like if you would ask like what is my life philosophy, it would be pretty much that, where it's like everything not really revolves around me, but it's like everything, all the experience, all the mistakes other people make, all the successes other people have and stuff like that are there for me to learn from, for me to absorb, for me to like to like review and think and like act upon, right? That's kind of how I view life, right? So it's like that's why like having a kid for me is not very important. It's like, well, once I'm dead, like the kid doesn't exist anymore. For me, it doesn't exist, right? Not that it's like, well, in this case you can just go ahead and kill everyone. No, there's still consequences. Your world will still punish you for making bad choices, right? But it will also reward you for making right choices, right? But it's like at the end of the day, it's kind of like it's like a game, right? It's like you have your progression system, right? It's like think about it as a single player game where the NPCs are AIs. They have like actual artificial intelligence. That's the world.
tries to show. We see this clearly when Neo
It's fucked up.
And the world
It's like it's so hard to explain in words. I hope like I got the meaning across, but it's like it's really hard to explain.
Wakes up in a nightmare situation. Upon opening his eyes in the real world, Neo almost drowns trying to remove all the cables that are attached to him.
Oh god, it's disgusting.
Once he catches his breath and takes a look around, Neo sees the true reality of the world, a human factory farm. As far as the eye can see, there lies identical pods attached to enormous constructs, all of them containing other humans being harvested for their energy.
Yeah, but it's like, so what? It's like, so what? Because it doesn't matter what happens to your body as long as your mind is alive. The reason you need your body is to keep your mind alive. Your life is your mind. So it doesn't really matter if you're in a human farm or not. It's all about your mind.
The robot suddenly sees that Neo has managed to escape his sedation. He is quickly discarded and thrown down a trash chute towards a pit filled with water. Luckily, before drowning, Neo is picked up by the claw of a ship and is subsequently rehabilitated by Morpheus and his crew. When being operated on, Neo questions why his eyes hurt. Along with his extreme muscle atrophy, Morpheus explains the reason. Neo is in a full-on breakdown because he has never actually experienced any kind of bodily autonomy. Once Neo is brought to stable condition, he is plugged into a chair and enters the Matrix along with Morpheus, because Morpheus needs to show Neo the true reality of the Matrix. At first, Neo is in disbelief that he's inside a computer program, but Morpheus questions him on if this is actually so hard to believe. He explains that if what you can feel, smell, taste, and see, then what constitutes as real is simply electric signals being interpreted by your brain.
And that's really my point about the Matrix. Like, what does it matter what real is? It only matters for what your mind perceives as real.
This explanation, Morpheus reveals that the outside world is in an even bleaker scenario than the one inside their home base. He explains that after losing control of artificial intelligence, humanity decided to create a nuclear winter, believing that a lack of energy from the sun will eliminate the machines. After the nukes, the world became a wasteland, run entirely by machines, while humanity was trapped in a dream world. This dream world is the Matrix, a simulation of humanity's golden age. It is all-encompassing and never stops for the people inside it, where they live their whole lives believing that the Matrix is real. And if this wasn't heavy enough, Morpheus then springs it onto Neo that he believes that Neo is the reincarnation of a man with the power to change anything in the Matrix. He is the one.
He is Jesus.
If you've been following my videos, I'm sure you know how suspicious I am of mainstream media. Oftentimes, mainstream media can be the biggest impediment to understanding the truth and keeping you stuck in us.
I love that. This is the best one. Fiery but mostly peaceful protests after police shooting. Meanwhile, like shit is actually on fire.
Society's Matrix. Which is why I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Ground News. Ground News shows you how breaking news is being covered across the political spectrum. They do this by gathering news from 50,000 sources around the world and puts all related articles in one place so you can easily compare coverage. By doing this, Ground News allows you to see the story behind the story. Using data-driven analytics, they look at things such as political bias, reliability, and ownership of news outlets. I mean, for example, check out the story about 1,300 channel migrants costing the English channel on one day. Not only can I see that there are 31 sources reporting on this, but I can also quickly identify which sources have a political bias, according to the ratings from independent news monitoring organizations. And what's interesting about this story is that it's mostly being covered by right-leaning news outlets, all with varying degrees of factuality. With Ground News, I can also check out the ownership of each of the media companies, seeing if they're controlled.
The question is, who decides if the broadcasting network is right-leaning or left-leaning? That's kind of like, that would probably be the only issue with this, but overall, I mean, I kind of like don't care about most stories in the world, Stuff that I care about.
By governments, media conglomerates, or if they're independent news outlets. And this data is invaluable if you want to find the truth behind each news story. So go to groundnews/moon, or click the link in the description below or the pinned comment to try Ground News for free, or go subscribe to them to get unlimited access and support a small team of media outsiders working to make the news more transparent. Initially not taking things very well, Neo panics at his newfound enlightenment. He's realizing that the entire world around him, all his friends, memories, icons, dreams are all warped for the benefit of an elite minority. It's as though the Matrix was a warning about the path modernity is taking us, where technology has infested every aspect of daily life to a point that we've attached our own psyches into the hands of a few. You see, in our age of overconsumption and mass production, the powerful must maintain constant relevance through advertising and media. By doing this, multinationals always assure continuous demand to drive continuous profits. Instead of just manufacturing a particular product, companies need to manufacture the structure, the personality, the culture of the universal public, and big tech serves as the perfect vessel to do this. Every day of your life, big tech delivers you into an alternative reality, playing on your emotions, depression, fear, anxiety, hunger, lust, laughter, acting directly on your sensorium. The content you are constantly watching every hour of every day of every year is not a vision but a manufactured data stream that can be sanitized to impose cultural values that generate immense wealth. Little do we realize that every day we are chipping away our autonomy to an all-pervasive drug that delivers whatever message those dealing the drug wish it to be, providing a fertile ground for fostering technocracy. Which is why in the Matrix movie, this is symbolized by AI using human consciousness to fuel their ever-expanding empire. Neo realizes the challenge he is up against. He has to mentally and physically overcome the entire system he lived in to find true meaning, to save the entire human population. However, Neo's fears soon start to dissipate.
Here's the thing, first of all, I would say a lot of people in that world would not want to be saved into this world. Right? It's like a lot of people inside the Matrix would not want to be rescued from the Matrix. Because like, let's say it like this, okay? If your heart is already kind of rough, but you're kind of managing to handle it, it's like, imagine like leaving the Matrix and waking up in that fucking shit. It's like a lot of people just die out of like sheer panic. They just like jump off, like it's like too much. And people who have a good life and waking up be like, dude, I had such a good life. Are you fucking kidding me? I have to wake up to this shit? No, put me back. Are you kidding me? Put me back. I want to be a whale. I want to be a whale in the pond of fish.
Once he begins practicing and learning the inner workings of the Matrix. Back inside the program, Morpheus introduces Neo to a combat simulation inside of a dojo.
This is a sparring program, similar to the programmed reality of the Matrix.
It has the same basic rules like gravity. What you must learn is that these rules are no different than the rules of a computer system. Some of them can be bent, others can be broken.
Using a computer algorithm, Neo is able to completely understand the intricacies of Kung Fu, despite having never done so before. So Neo and Morpheus begin fighting. At the start, Morpheus is dominating. He seems unstoppable, he's flying across the room. And so when Morpheus asks why Neo lost, Neo explains that Morpheus is just too fast. But he counters this by saying that the fighting ability has nothing to do with their muscles. Cluing Neo in, Morpheus implies that Neo doesn't even need to breathe in air when inside the Matrix. So upon hearing this, Neo is able to overtake Morpheus during the second fight. He understands that the whole game is mental. If he can overcome the mental barriers inside of his mind, he can win anything. And by doing this, he stuns the whole crew watching the ordeal. This is all part of the trials and tribulations that Campbell identified in the hero's journey.
I mean, the problem is with like the Matrix, in my opinion, could have been like more of a series than what's called a movie. Because like it feels like the training arc was too fast, you know. It's like there's a lot of like skipping in time throughout. Like it feels like he learned all of this way too fast, whereas it could have been like a series and like you would see it. But still a good movie. It was portrayed decent enough that you didn't really care about it. It's just only when you stop to think about it, like, well, he kind of like learned it way too fast, you know.
The greatest barrier to success. This is the step that Campbell describes as the training and tribulations in his work. This step happens once the hero has entered into the unknown and serves as their introduction into the new world. For Neo, this is quite literal. The skills he will need are taught to him after he first exits the Matrix and goes back inside to train with Morpheus. Neo's teachings also bring Neo closer to the truth. The more he learns about the real world and the Matrix that he lived in, the more he experiences both of them and the further he is pushed towards the truth. Afterwards, Morpheus introduces Neo to another program inside the Matrix, one that holds everything that is expected in a real city, ranging from buildings to cars and simulated people. Morpheus explains that the Matrix is their enemy, but most people are not ready to be unplugged from it,
Yep.
as they are too dependent on the system.
100%.
Before listening, Neo's eyes are caught by a striking woman in a red dress. When she gets behind Neo, the woman suddenly changes into an agent, pointing a gun at him. Morpheus then reveals that these agents are in fact sentient computer programs, fully capable of manipulating the Matrix at will. It turns out
Mr.
that
Smith.
one of these agents was killed, but Morpheus, believing that Neo is the one, states that the agents will never be as strong or as fast as he can be. This dream world of the Matrix is a reflection towards fears of consumer.
It's basically like, can a man be faster than a calculator, right? Like, that's pretty much it. And in the Matrix case, Neo is supposed to be faster than a calculator.
You see, all these films in the late 90s were particularly concerned with this, as they saw their society become more and more focused on products and commodities. But nowadays, these fears are even more prevalent. The vessel of big tech dominates everyday life in a way that we've never seen before, where human values...
We live in the Matrix, yeah.
For profit, where our opinions, our values, our culture, our thoughts are all controlled by technology that has saturated everything. And the numbers show that this is increasingly leading us towards nihilism. Just look around you. The atomized...
Oh, is that why I turned to nihilism when I was growing up? Because I was I was practically living on the internet and stuff? I mean, yeah, would make sense. The way I see it's like... So, like, for example, my grandma really loves, like... And my brother, too, really love, like, traveling the world and seeing all that stuff. The way I see it's like, bro, just Google Maps. Just Google Maps and you'll see it. Right? It's not that big of a deal. But because of that, where it's like, well, it's not that big of a deal, I feel like maybe that's why I turned to into a very nihilistic person. Right? Though the thing is, like, nihilism, you can view it in two ways. One's like, can be like, you know, where it's like life doesn't matter. It's like, and all that stuff, which is like, sounds depressing. But also you can view it in the sense it's like, well, if nothing matters, then what stops you from trying your hardest? Right? Which is like, put in as much effort as you can, because it doesn't matter if you fail. Right? So it's like the fear of like the negative should also be gone, right? It's like, put in as much effort as you can to make your life better, because, well, even though it doesn't matter, at least you'll have a better time doing what doesn't matter, right? Meanwhile, it's like a lot of people, they get stopped because it's like, you know, social pressure. Oh, God. Oh, what a stretch. Stretch cancer. Oh, I can't even say anything. Anyways, yeah, so, like, for example, you want to achieve something, right? But it's like you have these fears. Like, I would take it from like my clients when I was a trainer. Like, I had a lot of clients who were like afraid of going to the weight area where like all the guys are the bodybuilder, all the guys who are lifting weights are, and it's like, it feels intimidating. But it's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter, right? All this stuff that intimidates you, it doesn't matter, right? So you could view nihilism in both ways.
The loneliness, the depression, the anxiousness. Just as Neo's life in the Matrix made him nihilistic, to find meaning, we must continue our own journey. And the nature of the Matrix strikes a resemblance to the concept known as the habitus. The habitus is a sociological theory that tells us that from a young age, the social convention and rules that people follow are imprinted onto your personality. These conventions aren't just habitual, but instead influence people's ways of thinking and how they see the world. And once you become part of the habitus, your actions perpetuate the cycle for other people. The habitus can be viewed much like the rules of a game. Seemingly illogical things are taken for granted and enshrined as rules. If you didn't know the rules of golf, for example, the sport would just look ridiculous. Why not just pick up the ball and put it in the hole? But knowing the rules of golf means that you see this in an entirely different way.
Fair enough,
Of course, the rules of golf exist for a reason, otherwise it wouldn't be an actual game. But the habitus has no real purpose by itself. It exists as a manifestation of the environment you grew up in. So then who controls the rules and conventions that easily influence our thoughts? When you start to ask this question about your own life, you then start to see that once you break free of the constraints placed on you, that you can finally see the world as it truly is. And the Matrix is the allegory for this. It exists as a prison that surrounds you entirely, dictating what you see, what you value, and what actions you take. But none of this is actually real. Once these conventions, But again, real is a perception of your mind, so it doesn't matter if it's real or not. Right? It's like, it's just what you perceive as real.
The only time the real would matter is if you would be plucked out of this reality into like a completely different situation where your reality is just shattered, right? If you live and die in the Matrix, you would not care. It's if you live in the Matrix and you get plucked out, then you would care about it. If you are living outside the Matrix, then you already have that knowledge of like outside the Matrix, then you get plugged into the Matrix and you get stuck there, then you would care. It's only the contrast of the realities that would affect you. The reality itself, it doesn't matter what you perceive as real or not.
Values, once these rules are tainted too much, the cracks start to show. And in the Matrix, the cracks show when Neo breaks free. This is Neo's journey, breaking free from the constraints of falsehood. It's only through his self-improvement and search for the truth that he can finally find meaning. It's during the time of Neo's training in the Matrix that we're introduced to the character of Cypher. From the very first conversation, Cypher complains that he should have just taken that blue pill and begins questioning the credibility of Neo's journey altogether. We then
Yeah, because man, like his life right now, Cypher's life, sucks in comparison. Right? Maybe he could have been somebody in the Matrix, right? Like, it sucks in comparison.
Reveal of Cypher's endgame while he's dining in a restaurant inside of the Matrix, being joined by Agent Smith. Willing to sell out his whole crew, Cypher requests to be put back inside the Matrix. Of course, not without benefits. In return, he wants to be a rich, famous actor who doesn't remember anything about the real world. Here, Cypher's entire character is summarized as he states the line, "Ignorance is bliss." Meanwhile, Neo, Morpheus, and some other members of the crew enter the Matrix to meet an important figure called the Oracle. Upon arrival, Neo sees a group of children who are all doing seemingly impossible things. A few are manipulating objects like bubbles and blocks using their minds, and one child even manages to bend a spoon right in front of Neo. Neo takes an interest in the child, who explains that trying to bend the spoon is impossible. One has to realize that there is no spoon. They have to use their mind to overcome impossible obstacles. Once Neo hears this, he looks at the spoon and is able to easily bend it with his mind, just before he's quickly called off to see the Oracle. This spoon bending scene is important as it establishes the way out of the Matrix. As you start to realize that everything in your life is determined by your mindset, your life really begins to change. And the change of mindset isn't
big
only
true
an internal change, but also an external one. The way you see the world actually changes it around you. In an abstract sense, we all create our own realities through our experiences. The world is only made up of the data that our senses give us, and it's up to us to fill in the rest. In the movie, this is made literal. Neo can bend the spoon because he knows and accepts the truth that it's simply a figment of the Matrix, and in doing so, this puts him forward on his hero's journey. But because Neo hasn't fully accepted his journey, or fully understood the fact that he is the chosen one, the Oracle doesn't have good news for him, as she states that he really isn't the one. And once Neo is receiving this bad news, Neo then gets a case of deja vu after watching a black cat repeat its movements. As soon as he says this indicates to the crew that there has been a glitch in the Matrix. It turns out that this whole visit was...
Bro, whenever you have deja vus, there's a glitch in the Matrix. That's kind of funny though.
Just a trap setup with the help of Cypher.
Also, like, that is not what deja vu looks like at all, but yeah, but they had to do it somehow.
From here, as Morpheus is then caught by Agent Smith, and the rest of the group flees to a nearby garage. As it's revealed that Cypher has backstabbed all of them, he then goes on to kill many of his crew, but is stopped right before he can kill the chosen one, Neo. This too is part of the hero's journey. Campbell shows that one of the key steps in your hero's journey is facing someone who wants to bring you back to where you started. And in the Matrix, Cypher represents this. He's the guys you know who want to bring you down. He's the other crab in the bucket.
He's the hater. He's the hater.
People don't want you to succeed. They don't want you to escape the Matrix surrounding you, because if you do, it shines a bad light on them. They know their flaws. They know their mindset is weak. Cypher's failed sabotage demonstrates the futility of the desire to go back to ignorance. And this is true for both our reality and the Matrix. Once the truth is uncovered, there's no going back. Which brings us on to one of the most interesting scenes in the movie, a dialogue between Morpheus and Agent Smith. Two equals and opposite sides of an extensive conflict between man and AI. Smith equates humanity to a virus, one that spreads exponentially while devouring all the resources in their way.
And the funniest thing is he's not wrong. It's like an extremely negative view, but it's like, I wouldn't say all humanity does that. A lot of humanity used to live in ecosystem, but it's like, I would say the modern humanity is closer to what he's describing. We're not there yet, but it's like, I feel like it's an inevitable thing that like humanity will reach to the point of what Smith is saying, right? For better or for worse, I mean, this is what it is.
And from the perspective of the machine, he isn't entirely wrong. Smith then clears his subordinates from the room and further levels with Morpheus. It turns out Smith hates the Matrix just as much as Morpheus, yet for very different reasons. Smith views himself as above it. Agent Smith represents the elite. He's the one who creates the Matrix. He hates the people inside of it. The people inside of it are the only ones feeding his life force, and yet he can't help but despise these people who live in blissful ignorance of the horrible world around them. They have no idea what the truth is. They don't know the darkness of the real world. And by accessing the secrets that Morpheus holds, this will allow Agent Smith to completely destroy the last remaining bastion of humanity in the outside world, a place called Zion. But before Smith can extract this information, Neo and Trinity storm the building with multiple firearms, rescuing Morpheus in the process. The trio make their escape through a phone booth as Morpheus exits the Matrix along with Trinity, but not before witnessing Agent Smith at the last second, leaving him alone with Neo. The two begin fighting, but Neo isn't able to keep up with Smith, and is eventually shot dead. Back on the ship with Morpheus and Trinity, they watch Neo as all of this happens. Devastated, Trinity whispers into Neo's ear that she would fall in love with a dead man, and that he is the one. As she kisses Neo, he is thunderously resurrected, almost in a biblical sense. This scene again is just another phase of the hero's journey, the point of deepest despair. It seems like all is lost as Neo lies unconscious.
Such a good movie.
He makes the choice to save Morpheus. He begins the final steps towards his journey. His death and rebirth are literal, but they're also metaphorical. Mr. Anderson, the person with no purpose, the person who's nihilistic, the person who's self-hating, self-wallowing, living an atomized, transient, lonely life in a dystopian megacity, is gone. However, Neo is born. This sequence and what follows next is the conclusion of Neo's journey, where he faces his harshest challenge yet as he journeys into the government building to rescue Morpheus. In doing so, he becomes the one. He conquers his mind, and by doing so, Neo fulfills his hero's journey. He finally finds meaning in life. Neo defeats the nihilism surrounding him by accepting the truth around the world. And from Neo's perspective, everything around him is now computer code. He effortlessly flies into Agent Smith, obliterating him and causing his colleagues to run away. Once all said and done, Neo exits the Matrix and detonates an EMP, securing the safety of his operations base back in the real world. The film then ends with Neo talking on a payphone, speaking directly to the audience. Neo sends a warning that he is going to expose the truth of what's really out there, and he proceeds to fly straight up in the sky as the film cuts to black. This end scene is an allegory of escaping nihilism. Through rejecting our fractured habitus and the false value...
I don't like that he's saying it like that, like escaping nihilism, because if nihilism is so bad, but it's like... He's not wrong, it's just... it's just that... I don't like the sentence.
Of the virtual world, one can find meaning in reality. Among many, these consumerist forces we find today are distractions that drive people away from the truth. But with self-improvement and your own hero's journey, it's possible to escape the clutches of your own matrix. In the film, the bullets that would have killed Neo before simply stop in mid-air. In the same way, the things that seem like problems in the virtual world cease to matter when you stop focusing on them and pay attention to the real ones. This whole end scene is supposed to highlight the true power of...
Yeah, if you just consider like social media as the true world, and it's like you just like, you know what, delete your Instagram, delete your Facebook, delete your, just go out and like touch grass. Yeah, sure, whatever. I don't know if that would... I don't know if that can change you from nihilism though. It's more likely to be you're less likely to be nihilistic if you're in touch with other people, like real people, but I still feel like you can be nihilistic regardless.
Overcoming our own mind, our own self-destructive thoughts, and our own self-limiting beliefs. By defeating his anxieties, Neo could defeat anything. It was only once he conquered himself that he could find transcendental meaning and overcome the impossible, which is what this film should show.
The fight scenes in The Matrix are so funny. If you watch them now, they're like, what? That's not how it works.
So when you realize that you have full control of your behavior, addictions, anxieties, relationships, health, and destiny, can you start to wake up from the delusion you've been living in? This is the only way of breaking through the matrix that has enslaved your life.
Yeah, basically when you can have a critical view of your life, or like a retrospect of your life, then you can basically do the same thing, right? It's like you can use Matrix is just a great example for like so many philosophical ideas. I do like what he's using here for like escaping nihilism and stuff like that, but so you can do it for like other shit. Like social media is a fantastic one for sure, but it's like even just like your relationships with other people in the real world, you can probably use the Matrix as an example. If you're always surrounded, like, okay, here's like what I mean by that. Like, for example, if you're always surrounded by like the same people, right? It's like the same 5 friends, right? That's like all you know is like your 5 friends, right? It's like what they care about is what you care about and stuff like that. It's like you might think your friends are like fantastic or whatever, but in reality, your friends can be pieces of shit. You're not taking into account anyone else, right? I'm basically trying to shift this into the Miskiff thing. But yeah. Anyways, yeah, that's the video by Moon. Definitely a good video. I thought his editing is crazy good though. It's not like you see like a Savix view where there's so much editing going on, like non-stop. But it's just on point editing, you know. But anyways, that's that. And we'll see you in the next one. Peace.